There we go. Hello. Thank you to YouTube for existing. Thank you to YouTube for letting people upload videos using their webcams. They don't do that now, but that's how I got started on YouTube. Thank you for all of you for watching. Thank you to the owner of this camera for not telling me it's off limits for my vlogging. I want to talk today about the policy change that happened, policy of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, about the children of homosexual people who engage in homosexuality, not just people who feel. There's a difference. And I've thought of 3 reasons why the policy makes sense to me. But before I get to those reasons, I'll give a quick summary of the policy in case nobody heard about it or you heard inaccurately about it. One thing that did not change in November was the teaching that sex is only for husbands and wives. All others, God says no to. And others includes man and man and woman, even if a government calls it a marriage or gives them a marriage license or marriage certificate. Let's see, so that didn't change. What did change is going from defining homosexual relationships as fornication to defining it now as apostasy. You know, maybe there's a 4th reason that makes sense to me. And now, as with other children of people in a state of apostasy, we don't baptize them. Polygamist, a child of a polygamist who wants to get baptized has to wait until they're an adult and on their own, and they, when they get baptized, say, I believe polygamy is wrong and I will not do it. And some of the outrage about it is doesn't make sense to me. We're just saying this person's not a member anymore. We're not. Some of the outrage would make sense to me if we were calling for lynch mobs, if the church was calling for lynch mobs or something like that. But the church is just saying that one over there is not one of us. That's it. Oh yeah, and their kids, they can join us, but they got to be adults and on their own. One of the reasons it makes sense to me is this policy is consistent with church teaching, with the Lord's teaching. Let me use it that way. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has only been around since 1830. But the Lord has had true prophets on the earth off and on since the beginning of time. And we have some of those early teachings still surviving. And so, one difference between Mormons and Muslims is Mormons don't say, hey, the guy in the past, he's a Mormon. Yeah, we'll recognize that Moses wasn't a Mormon. Mormon is the people here now. But Moses was a true prophet. And throughout time, and the records that have survived, God has taught that sex is for husbands and wives. He uses the word abomination. Okay, technically it wasn't given in English, but the word God used in a revelation he gave to Moses was translated by the King James translators into abomination when he was describing homosexual activity. And abomination is, I'm sure the King's translators did not translate an opposite word. I'm sure the word shouldn't have been translated as good, and they chose abomination. Abomination could be translated as very bad, not just bad. And the New Testament has verses that denounce homosexual actions. Nowhere in the scriptures does it say if you feel tempted to do something that's a sin, or if you feel inclined to do something that's a sin. It's if you actually do the thing. Or lust in your heart. So Jesus said nothing about homosexuality, but when he brought up the law of chastity in the Sermon on the Mount, he told his followers not to think about it, not to lust. So if you apply that principle to all of the law of chastity, which is reasonable, when the Old Testament calls it an abomination, and Jesus says don't lust and in your heart after something that is is a violation of the law of chastity, feeling that initial temptation, that attraction, having your heart fluttering, having a hard time catching your breath at the end of 8 hours next to that guy who is so hot, is not a sin. It's if you're daydreaming about a thing, sexual activity with that person while you're driving home, that you cross the line to lusting after that person and went past the initial feeling of attraction or inclination. The church policy makes sense to me because it is consistent with our policy of generally, I'm using the word generally now, so if you found one time when it happened, that doesn't prove what generally happens wrong. In general, we don't baptize little children if the parents aren't members. I'm sure somewhere with millions of us, with tens of thousands of missionaries, it happens somewhere sometime. But in general, we do not baptize children. We always seek parent permission. If somebody is a teenager and their parents aren't members, then we're more likely to say, well, you're older. You're more able to stick with the decision and get yourself to church. But apostas, in general we don't do that. And when the parents of a child are in a state of apostasy, those ex-Mormons that you'll find on YouTube telling you how evil and bad the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is, if they've got a 10-year-old that wants to get baptized, with all that different teaching and feeling they would get at home from their parents, that's going to be rough on them. Or the polygamists is another example. Polygamists are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You get excommunicated for that. So somebody who's engaging in polygamy is in a state of apostasy. If their children want to join the church, they're going to have to become an adult, and then by all means join, and as part of the process of joining, tell us that you understand that what your parents are doing is wrong. Not disown your parents, not never talk to them again, not lynch them. Just tell us that you believe what they are doing is wrong when you get baptized. This policy about the children of homosexuals who are in a relationship, and that's important, in a relationship. Somebody who feels same-sex attraction and acts on it by getting into a live-in relationship or going through the process of getting a marriage, getting a marriage certificate from the city, state, whatever level of government gives it out where they are formalizing their unchastity. And so it's completely reasonable in my mind that is a condition of apostasy. If you're formalizing, you're violating the church's teachings. Whereas, somebody who has a one-night stand they didn't formalize it. They aren't, making a commitment to do it again later. But if somebody, is living with their sexual partner, they're in a way implying that they're going to keep doing it, do it again. If they get a marriage license, when you get married, part of marriage is sex. An important part of marriage. And so if you get married to someone, of course you're promising to have sex with them later. Let's see, so what's the other reason? Let's see. Shoot, I thought of 3, then when I started the video I thought of a 4th one, I didn't write it down. The other reason, I've got to give credit to LDS.net. There's a blogger there who wrote 9 reasons why the policy makes sense. I'd recommend you trying to find it and reading it. Maybe I'll put it in the links in the description of this video. I'll put a description of it. I'll put links to try to find that to put links to it maybe. And the scriptures that show how long the Lord has been saying sex with the same sex is on his do not do list. But one thing that I hadn't thought about until I read this list put up by LDS.net, or on LDS.net, is it complicates custody matters. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a fact now. In America, if you have kids and you're in a custody battle, you must be careful about, how do you put it? You don't get to tell your children how big of a loser the other parent is. If you do that, you might lose custody. This LDS.net article, I'm trying to remember, was it on the original list or did it link to something? But either the original list or a link that was provided on the original list had an extensive essay about this subject, specifically parents losing custody of their children because there was a custody battle, and they told their children how bad of a parent or person the other parent was. And in one of those instances, the wife was just talking to her new husband about how much of a loser the old husband was in front of the kids. Not even sitting the kids down and looking in their face and saying, your dad's a loser, but just, talking to the other husband and saying, man, I'm so glad I'm not married to that loser anymore. He is such a loser. The article did not have exact quotes, but it was something like that she was saying. So, baptizing a child into a church that says that what the one parent is doing is an abomination and an act of apostasy, or living in a state of apostasy, could definitely be construed by a family court that's deciding the custody of the kids as attacking the other parent or putting down the other parent. And then in a scenario like that, then the active member of the church parent, who's not in a state of apostasy, loses custody, gets almost no influence or an extremely small amount of influence over this growing child, and the parent in a state of apostasy gets a lot more influence. So it makes sense to me, the policy makes sense to me, because I think a child is far better off growing up, going to church sometimes, going to church a lot, spending a lot of time with their parent, who is a believing member of the church, active member of the church. The child is better off doing that and not getting baptized yet than being baptized but living with the parent who is in a state of apostasy, never going to church, living with the parent that tells them that the church is evil and hates mom and dad. So the fourth reason that I thought of and then forgotten, and I just remembered, or at least this is a reason that some of the anger, a lot of people's opinions that I have been able to observe about this were by reading what they wrote on YouTube. So, not on YouTube, what they wrote on the internet. And, okay, maybe I'm misinterpreting some of what was written. Because when somebody's typing, unless they push all caps, because all caps means yelling when you're typing, maybe I was misinterpreting their vitriol and anger, but it seemed to me there was a lot of vitriol and anger about this decision, this policy. But some of this vitriol and anger does not make sense to me, but would make sense to me if the church's policy and teaching was going to effect the eternal salvation of those children. But according to Mormon theology, pre-existing theology and understanding, that was not overturned by this policy issued in November, which wasn't publicly announced at first, just sent out to the local leaders of the church, but someone got a hold of it, it became public, and then the church had to publicly respond to it. One Mormon belief is God will judge us based on what we had the opportunity to do. And we will not be condemned for what we did not want to do. God's going to look at our heart and what we had a chance to do. Somebody who dies before they are 18 and was not allowed to get baptized because their parents, or one of those people on YouTube who is an ex-Mormon telling people how bad Mormons are, or a polygamous child, or the child of someone in a homosexual relationship who was not created by that relationship. Oops, tangent, sorry. Somebody knows situations who dies before they're 18 but wanted to get baptized will end up in the celestial kingdom. God's not going to hold it against them that they couldn't. Just like somebody who died in died before 1829. They're not going to be condemned by God for not getting baptized. Somebody whose parents won't give permission for the baptism and they die before they're 18. They're not going to be condemned by God. They're going to be judged and treated as if they got baptized, if that was a desire of their heart, if they would have done it, if they could have done it. Thank you for watching this video. You have a good day. Thank you. Bye.